up behind us.
I know. I was looking at that.
Yeah.
It's really awesome,
That's
man.
from TC. All right, guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the Bitcoin Plus Plus Conference live news desk. And joining us now, we've got Topher and we've got Tristan from Escrow. Thanks for joining me, guys. I really know nothing about what you guys do, so I need you guys to give me the lowdown. What is Escrow and how are you fixing the world with it?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Tristan Beach. I'm the founder and CEO of Escrow. And essentially what we're building is a Bitcoin native, non-custodial smart contract platform for escrow, right? And so the problem that it's fixing is that we're going to bring the ability to dispute transactions on Bitcoin like you would with a credit card, essentially. So what does that mean, right? What this means is that we're building an API, an app, and SDKs for an app for grandma. The API and SDKs are for developers, so they can build marketplaces, platforms, and banks, and other really cool stuff with our platform. So yeah, Topher.
Yeah. So what we're doing is a little different than escrow that you may have seen in other places in Bitcoin. So typically escrow is like a 2 of 3, right? And so if you have a buyer and a seller, you have Alice and Bob. Alice is the buyer, Bob's the seller, and they'll agree on an escrow agent. And that escrow agent will come in during a dispute and they'll side with one or the other. So there's some issues with that setup, mainly being that in a 2 of 3, 2 parties can come in at any time and just renegotiate the terms. So they can sign any transaction they want. So if you look at HODL HODL or any other like 2 of 3 setup, that's the case. What we're doing is we're actually doing something where everything is used, everything's signed up front. So we're using pre-signed transactions. So we have this protocol set up to where we set up a contract, kind of put the terms that you want in the contract. We host that contract for you. And then we invite funders to come in and fund that contract. It could be the buyer. So if it's a buyer in this contract, they would also be the funder. But they would pre-sign everything that's going to happen in the contract. So we don't have the ability to renegotiate the terms at any time. They're already coming in with their pre-signed transactions, and we're just sitting on those, and then we can choose to broadcast whichever one, depending on how the contract goes.
Interesting. Okay, so I may misunderstand. Are you guys does Escrow act as some type of a counterparty or like some type of a guardian for these contracts?
Essentially, I mean,
maybe it's poor wording, but that's the closest thing I can.
Yeah, we have to be careful with what words we use these days. I don't want to get arrested.
An asterisk and a star.
Don't use any frying pan, so it's okay.
Yeah, but we're essentially a dumb provider. So like one thing that I like to use as a reference is Nostr. So in Nostr, there's sort of this monkey that Nostr's designed around smart clients, dumb relays. So the clients really kind of handle all of the logic, and the relays just kind of sit there and they receive and relay messages. That's all they really do. So we're doing that for escrow. So you can think of anybody participating in a contract as essentially being like a signing device, because this is a signing device that you're going to use that's handling your private keys. And so the signing devices do all the smart stuff. When we come in, we essentially already have a contract filled out. We already have, we call them deposits, but these are Bitcoin transactions that are going in a 2 of 2. Everything's pre-signed. It's just given to us as a package. And then all we can really do is just follow the terms of the contract.
So what would be some examples of retail use cases for this?
Ooh, yeah. So my favorite one would be, I mean, there's so many use cases with what you can do with our API and platform. But I think ultimately what this is going to come down to is creating a Bitcoin collateralized credit card. And so what that means is that you deposit Bitcoin into a contract, and from there you can create a credit card with your credit limit based on the amount of Bitcoin and collateral, which is great because now what this is allowing people to do is bring it to the masses, not only for like, making it easier to spend your Bitcoin, but making it easier to spend in a way that doesn't actually affect the on-chain cost, because when you actually send Bitcoin right now on-chain, it's getting really expensive.
Yes.
And so
we hope it will.
Temporarily.
We hope it will. So
no, it's going up.
I want number go up and fee go up. That's
as do I.
The reality is that if that doesn't happen, then we've really done something wrong. I know that, of course, the big blockers and all these other people have be upset about that, but I think that, yeah, I'm on the same page as you guys.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
paid.
this is a value network. So yeah,
Right.
sorry, continue.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, so the cool thing about that is like now we can do that with fiat. But the really cool thing I would like to do is have the main chain Bitcoin and collateral, and having the SAT equivalent on Lightning, so that the channel output isn't really necessary for making it, the transfer of mainnet to Lightning. It'll make it a lot easier. Just go back and forth with a real no issue on the technical side of things.
We can like lock up Bitcoin as collateral and have that collateral released based upon a Lightning payment, for example. Yeah, because a Lightning payment includes a cryptographic hash. I know that's getting a little technical, but
No, it's good.
Yeah, but when you have an invoice, basically to show that you've paid that invoice, you get a receipt. You basically have the pre-image, and so we can actually use that as proof to release collateral, because essentially we're sitting on these transactions. So just as easily as we can go, okay, based upon inputs from members of a contract, we're going to spend this Bitcoin transaction. We can just say, well, we're not going to spend any Bitcoin transaction because that's the terms of the contract. And so we can back that up with the cryptography from a Lightning invoice in order to just have Lightning can move, like a Lightning payment can move, but the Bitcoin doesn't necessarily have to move. And so this is like when this company first started, we started as Lightning Escrow.
Yeah,
and
I
we were
feel like I heard of that.
Yeah, and we were using
How many years ago was that?
2.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 2.5 years in the making. Because funny enough, my co-founder and CTO back then was Super, but actually I fired him. So love you, Super. Yeah, I did fire Super.
Oh my
It was
god,
a long story, but
I can't
yeah,
believe you did that.
you know what? He's a great programmer, but when it comes to business, sorry, Super, but it's better out there.
Okay, there's
But,
still friends.
We spliced
no,
Super. Sorry.
no, I love Super. He's
No,
great,
for
man.
sure, he
He's
is.
hilarious. Love him to death. But the reason why we started this company mainly was because escrow is the biggest pillar of finance that no one talks about or knows about, because actually, fun fact for everybody watching, everybody uses it every single day, whether they realize it or not. So the two biggest uses of escrow in daily life is marketplaces like Amazon.com. So when a buyer puts money into an Amazon account for the seller, and they need to file a dispute, Amazon takes care of that. Or same thing with the credit card company. If you go to a coffee shop and you pay their credit card, same thing happens, because the money doesn't actually go from me to the coffee shop immediately. It actually sits with the bank for at least 2 weeks to a month, depending on which company you're using. But the reason for that is because disputability is now available. So we're bringing this to Bitcoin. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
And actually, I love that you're bringing this disputability, and I appreciate that it's its own piece, right? Because kind of like what we've seen with, not to bring it up, but just stupid shit coins, right? They try to create all of this type of scenarios right on their main chain where they can reverse transactions and whatnot. And this is just like, no, this to me makes more sense, right?
We're trying to keep it all in Bitcoin.
Yeah, keeping it all in Bitcoin, but at the same time, like you're essentially abstracting that away from the base layer, but you're still using the base layer.
Yes. So
I think that's important.
When covenants come around, maybe we can move all this to the base layer. But until covenants happen, it's like everybody suffers from this problem. We're all trying to figure out, how do we do this abstraction in a way that it's still something that you can validate, and it's still something that people can use. So yeah, and this is what we came up with. We originally had Lightning Escrow, where we were using HODL invoices, which I think some people are familiar with, like how, or at least just using a HODL invoice. But yeah, so a HODL invoice is essentially a stuck Lightning payment, and so you can sort of use that for escrow, because you can have an invoice that you purposefully get stuck in flight, as they say, and so then you can then resolve it or cancel it based upon like dispute resolution, like whether a payment should go through or should not go through. But that clogs up the Lightning network. So we've been trying to find a way to still do something like that, some sort of escrow that's still off chain, because let's be honest, like if you want to scale, you have to be able to do it off chain. If we're going to believe that in the future, like fees are going to be $100, $200 to move a transaction on chain, like it's going to come to a point where, let's say in the future, the only reason Bitcoin will move on chain is because something went wrong. Like either there's a dispute or there's some really good reason you need to move a lot of money.
So going back to the question that I had for you for about retail. So would the audience be corporations or individual users or combinations of both?
Yeah, so there's three big ones. So the first one is developers. Developers, because we want people building on top of this and start companies on top of this because some companies that people could start using their APIs, like, you know, an Upwork alternative, an Airbnb alternative, an Amazon alternative, you name it. I mean, anything that has a buyer and seller in place, you can build on top of. But our second biggest audience is just grandma, right? Because if so right now, escrow as it sits is very centralized and very old because it hasn't been updated since 1999. And we figured out a way to make it, on average, 190 times faster for a fifth the price. And
That's pretty specific.
Yeah, no, seriously.
Yeah,
it's very specific. So that's great because I want grandma using this and to prevent her from being scammed from a, you know, Facebook Marketplace transaction. So that's important. But the really big customer that we're focusing on is B2B. The reason for that is because once we partner with people who need this in their business, that allows people using their service to actually spend their Bitcoin in a safe manner without having to think about it too much.
I really appreciate that. I really love what you guys are doing. So
thank you, I appreciate it.
So let me ask you, I guess at this point, where are you in the bit escrow journey? Like, is it now that's it? It's out in the wild and you are actively, you know, like people are actively seeking you out to figure out how to implement your APIs, or are you still like at the end of the development phase, or like where are you guys now with this?
We just finished a huge milestone. So right now we have our website that just launched, which is at bitescrow.app. If you guys want to check it out. The second big milestone was the documentation. We have to do a refactor of that soon.
Yeah, we made some. We've been talking to some partners, and they've made some suggestions on things we should change, and so we made those changes. But we haven't updated the documentation, so that's what I'm going to be doing after this conference. Is,
look at you.
Yeah,
the tech
a lot of
guy.
grunt work.
And the last milestone that we just hit, we just announced earlier, was a developer playground. So what the developer playground is, essentially it uses all test chains, including Mutiny, to interact with our API in a way that people can understand, on a very low level, to where it's like, okay, well, you don't have to write code at all to interact with the API. So that's really cool. And
It's
that's
like it's like a free-form contract builder. It's like a web app. So it's playground.bitescrow.app. So you can go there, and you'll get this. It's sort of a heavy interface because it is meant to be a developer tool, but it's a free-form contract builder. So you can build any kind of contract you want with anybody you want. We have a cool way that you can sort of like pass these contracts around, sort of like PSBTs, but they're far more readable than a PSBT.
More into that and how we have the 3 different methods of negotiation of the contract, because I really think that's important.
Yeah, so in the protocol that we've put together for escrow, like we're blinded to negotiation. So we have no idea how this contract is negotiated
between the users.
Okay. When the contract comes to us, it's already completely filled out. We have nothing to negotiate. It's just, are we going to host this for funding and execute it, or are we not? So what we're playing around with is like, okay, so how do you negotiate this contract? So we originally, I put together this like really cool SDK to do this over Nostr, where you can do all this negotiation over Nostr. And ideally, I think that's the way we're going to go. We're just going to put out some open source tools for negotiation over Nostr. But right now, what we're playing around with is like something really more low tech. Where you can just pass the contract around in a URL, in a link, because links let you affix quite a bit of data to the end of them. So it looks really chonky when you send these links because it has all the data in the link. But it's really cool because you know, a lot of applications will allow you to send these large links. We really haven't run into any problems on any platforms. The only one that I've run into a problem is on Discord. Discord kind of gets really mad at you if you go above their, I think, 2,000 character limit. But text messages kind of know how to handle it now. Slack, Telegram, like all these other platforms, they can kind of handle this. So you just kind of pass this link back and forth, and it's really cool. You click on the link, and then you're just immediately transported into our contract form, and everything's pre-filled out. And so you just kind of go back and forth, adding your own stuff to it. And you're essentially negotiating a PSPT or multiple PSPTs, and with all the terms that you want us to use to execute the contract. So I think it's really cool. Yeah.
So I got a question for you guys. Would this type of API be of use in the situation, like let's say where somebody is buying a house
Absolutely.
or something like that? Okay.
Yeah, so I
real
come
estate.
from
Yeah.
a real estate and construction background, and one of the
Oh.
reasons why way back then when I was like really young, one of the issues I found was with customers I was working with, they kept complaining about the mortgages situation.
Yup.
It took so much time, paperwork, KYC, through the entire process, right?
The escrow's a pain.
And it's such a pain in the ass, dude. It really is. It's like there's so much unnecessary hands that the money goes through, and legal work is fine. I totally get that. But the money, especially, is like the fees associated with just sending a wire is ridiculous, right? It's like you don't need to charge a fee for sending a wire. It's like that's their job. You know, God forbid you send it on a Sunday because they won't. You know, maybe or not. Who knows?
Money doesn't travel on that day of the week.
Oh man, it's really annoying.
It's the Lord's day of rest.
Yeah, real estate is
And money.
real estate is definitely one of the biggest use cases I think for this.
Okay.
There's so many more, man. I mean, you could like name anything that involves a buyer and seller, and you could absolutely do it.
I'm just because I'm just thinking like because of the way that it works, and you guys act as this.
So we don't act as
it's like
we don't
host,
act,
but you have no. You're a host, but you have no controller say in any of it.
right.
That's what it is.
Just don't use the C word.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was like, you're not that, because that I already figured
We
out
are
as you
a
were explaining it,
contract
they're like, no.
service provider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I kind of see it as more being like, because yeah, obviously between a buyer and a seller, you can just use the example of somebody going to Walmart, right? And I don't necessarily see Walmart using it, but I do see it absolutely as you were explaining it with real estate, car purchasing, right? Like boats, like really big ticket items in life.
Exactly.
That's what I see it as.
And the coolest thing is that because
I could be wrong though.
No, you're
No,
totally
that's
right. No,
a
you're
perfect
absolutely
use
right.
case. That's,
Yeah,
that's something
cool.
you can use it for today. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, we're only launched on the test chains right now, so if you want to sell your car for mutiny coins, then it's perfectly legit.
They'll
But
port something one day. I'm just kidding. No, guys, that's not financial advice.
Ooh.
Sorry.
Ben Carman will become the new Satoshi.
Yeah.
That's the case.
We don't want him to disappear. We like Ben. We like Ben. Okay. So yeah. So if people want to find out, more information about BitEscrow, where can they go?
Yeah, so just go to bitescrow.app or just do a Google search of BitEscrow and we're the first result. And check us out.
Absolutely awesome. Tristan, Topher, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it, man.
Thanks.